start.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this was the first question. In short, like you are given an integer n, you need to find the number of distinct n-bit binary numbers such that no two consecutive bits in those numbers are 1. So
This was not the question.
okay, like I'm talking about the H modulus. Like this is the intended question. Like we made up a story out of this.
Like chocolate and candy?
Yeah.
Karthika, can you first of all, can you zoom a little bit? Your text is too small to see.
Okay, now?
Yeah, now it's fine. Yeah, anyone else, if it finds it too small, maybe Karthika can go one more zoom level in, otherwise it's fine. And go a little bit slowly, Karthika, explain how this is the same question, maybe if you made story around it.
Okay. So it's like there are n people standing in a row, and you need to give each of them either a candy or a chocolate. You need to distribute this among them such that no two consecutive people will get chocolates. So assume 0 as candies and 1 as chocolates. So in an n-bit binary number, there should not be any two consecutive ones. So yes, from this you can see it's same question. Now this is a quick explanation. Like it's just a Fibonacci series, so it's starting with 2 and 3. Now let us go through the explanation. If n equal to 1, so if there is only one person, it doesn't matter either if you give a candy to him or a chocolate. So there are two ways of distributing the chocolate, two ways of distributing. And if n equal to 2, then there are three ways in which you can distribute. So how would we go for some bigger n? Like we can have two cases where the distribution ends with a chocolate or with a candy. So there are two cases like the distribution ends with a 0 or a 1. If we see here, from n equal to 1, we can go to n equal to 2 with the distribution ending with 0 in both the cases. Like we can add 0 to this and 0 to this also, and we'll get a proper distribution. But while we are adding 1, we need to be careful that there will not be any two consecutive ones. So we can't add a 1 to this 1 in the first distribution. So we could only add to 0. So in this way, what we can do is we can see from n equal to 3 that from n equal to 1, we can add 1, 0 and 1 at the end, so that we can get two distributions which end with 1. And from n equal to 2, we can add zeros at the end, and we'll get three distributions from that. In total, it's just like f of n equal to f of n minus 1 plus f of n minus 2. So this was what expected from the first question, but you were also asked to print w mod m as answer may go larger for bigger n. So you just had to do modular arithmetic, like a of I equal to a of I minus 1 plus a of I minus 2 mod 10 power 9 plus 7, where you will initiate with a of 1 equal to 2 and a of 2 equal to 3. So this was the time complexity, order of n plus t, and space was order of n. So if we go through the solution, we just initialized an array with I in all the numbers and just pre-compute the value with modular arithmetic, and for each query you need to answer in order 1. Yeah, so this was it for the first question. Any doubts? Like, was it clear? If you have any doubts, you can put it in the chat.
If anyone found it really fast or something, they can tell, and Karthika is fine with repeating everything again, right, Karthika?
Yeah.
It's no issue. This upsolving session is for you to understand. Like, we have nothing to gain from it. If you have any doubts, you can ask.
Yeah, at any point, if you have any doubt, you can unmute or just put it in the chat. Maybe I'll go through this once again, the Fibonacci one. So there are two cases for any n. So you need to check whether the distribution is ending with a 1 or with a 0. So if the distribution is ending with 1, then the last but one person should not get a chocolate. I mean, then it will become 2 consecutive ones at the end. So you can't put 1 at all for all possibilities in the previous layer. So what you should do is you should put 0, 1 at the end of last but second layer. So check this case of where it ends with 1. So you are adding 0, 1 at the end of f of n minus 2 distributions. And for adding zeros at the end, you just can go with the previous layer, like just add 0 at the f of n minus 1 number of distributions. Okay, I think now it's clear, so we can go with the second problem, I think. Nishikant?
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
So yeah, first of all, like I want to know whether the so this is for the cost term problem, where you were given a tree and you have to calculate the sum of distances from each node to all other nodes. So was there any difficulty in understanding the core problem, like given this story, or was it clear, like what we have to do? So okay. So the question is, we are given a tree, and for each node in the tree, we have to find the sum of distances to the rest of the nodes from that particular node, and we have to do this for all other nodes. So let's see how we can do this. So like here are some 5 equations by which we can do this. So suppose this nodes of u, the nodes of u basically denotes uh, the number of nodes in a subtree. So like you can generally count the number of nodes in a particular subtree. So this is the formula for that. So if you want to calculate the nodes, the number of nodes the number of nodes in the subtree of u, then you add one for this particular node, and then you add all of the nodes, which is the sum of the nodes of v. Now suppose the problem is smaller. So like we want to calculate only the sum of distances to the nodes which are below v, so which is the down u. So suppose you want to calculate the sum of distances to all the nodes in the subtree of v. So how we can calculate that? So suppose you already know the answer for v, which is the down v. Now you want to calculate the answer for down u. So what you can do is, so you already know the sum of distances to all the nodes from v. Now in all those paths, you can add this one distance, and then you can find the down of u. Now you will have to add this one. How many number of times? Which is equal to the number of nodes in this subtree. So which is basically this. So down of u equal to sum over all v, where v is the child of u, and then you sum up down of v plus nodes of v. So now you have calculated down of v. So down of u basically denotes the sum of distances to all the nodes which are in the subtree of u. Now what will be our answer? So we want to calculate the sum of all nodes, like which are down, or which are going down, which are going downside and upside also. So what will be the answer? So the answer will be the down value and the up value. So we have already calculated the down value by this formula. Now let us see how we can calculate the up value. So for the up value, here let us assume that one more thing, just consider that u is the parent of v, like as noted here in the diagram. So now we calculate the up of v. So if when we would have calculated up of v, then we can directly add down of v plus up of v, then we'll get the answer for v, and then we can find the answer for all the nodes like this. So how to calculate up of v? So up of v basically denotes the sum of distances to all the nodes which are not a part of subtree of V. So yeah, so how do we calculate this? So suppose we already know the answer for U, which is the parent of U. Now what is answer for U? So answer for U denotes the sum of distances to all the nodes from U. Now from this quantity, when you subtract this quantity, so from this U, so from U, you know the answer. Suppose you know the distances, sum of distances to all the nodes from U. From that, you subtract this quantity, which is nodes of V minus down of V. So when you subtract this, you get the sum of distances to all the nodes from U to all the nodes which are not in the subtree of V. So basically, this whole quantity, by this whole quantity, you get from U to distances to all the nodes which are not a part of subtree of V. Now in this much part, if you add a distance 1, then you can get the sum of distances to all the nodes which go which take a path like this, which go above V. So from this quantity, like which is this one here, if you add 1 in all those paths, then you can get the answer for V. But how many times you have to add that? You have to add that this many number of times, because here you have how many nodes? The total number of nodes minus the number of nodes in the subtree of V. So you first do this and then you add this. So you get the up of V. So up of V basically denotes the sum of distances to all the nodes which are not in the subtree of V. So then after that, you add up of V and down of V. So the answer of V is so you add up of V and down of V. So like here, you just have to add down of V in this equation. So when you add down of V, then this down of V will get cancelled because of this minus here. So you get the simple equation here. So you have to just calculate for all the nodes, and the base case is the answer for the root is down of root, because for root the up of root is 0 because there are no nodes which are going above the root. So this is the base case. Now about the implementation. So first you can calculate these two quantities using one DFS, and after that you have to do another DFS to calculate these quantities. And you need not have to make an array for up of V. Like you can directly write this equation. So anyone has any doubts till now? Otherwise, I'll go through the code walkthrough. Okay, I'll go through the code then. Okay. Yeah. So this is the code. Now first we set the recursion limit because it's DFS and it can go like very deep. So you should do this first, and then first we take the number of nodes, then we make the graph. We take the input, we add all the edges, and this is the visited, which denotes basically whether the particular node has been visited or not. And then this is the down array and the nodes count array. So this is the nodes array which I just mentioned. And then this is the first DFS. So in the first DFS, we calculate down and nodes count. So nodes counts is basically first you add one for this. Sorry, yeah. So you add one is for this vertex U only, and then you do DFS from all the child of U. You go to all those V's, you initiate a DFS, and then from all those you add the nodes count, and then you calculate the down of U. So in the first DFS, you have calculated the nodes count and the down. Now, yeah, so here we launch the first DFS, and then we again initialize visited to false for all nodes, and then we'll calculate the answer. And yeah, this is the base case that the answer for the root is equal to the down of root, because for root there is no up. So then we initiate the second DFS. After that, uh, this is basically that equation which I just mentioned. So after this, so now the answer for V will contain the answer, like the sum of nodes from that particular node to all other nodes. So any doubts? Hello.
Yeah, if you have any doubts, you can put it in the chat.
Yeah. Any doubts in understanding these equations?
I think there are no doubts, so we can move. Janil?
Yes.
Okay, you can share your screen.
Am I audible?
Yeah, we can see your screen also.
So third problem was a very simple and brute force type of problem. And first two paragraph does not have any relevant information. We will see last paragraph. So you have given a string of length n and an integer k, and you have to print the maximum length k strong string you can make from string s. And string is k strong if character at ith index and I plus k modulo m index are the same. So solution of this problem, so we have to iterate from a 1 to n and check if assignment is possible for L and string. Means can we make k strong string of length L? We'll check for every L from 1 to n. So there are two parts to solve this problem. First, we create a graph where ith index and I plus k modulo L index means node are connected. We create such a graph, and we calculate number of connected components and length of the connected components using DFS in part 1. And in part 2, we assign characters to each connected component. A node in every node in connected component must have same character. Then only we can make L length k strong string. So in part 2, we are assigning characters to each connected component. If lengths of all connected are not same, then we cannot assign characters using greedy approach. Then it will become like a 0-1 knapsack problem, and it will be solved using DP. But hopefully, luckily, here length of all connected components are the same. So we can solve this problem using greedy approach. We can assign characters to any order of connected components. So here is this pseudocode for that. We maintain counts of unique characters. Then we iterate from 1 to n. We calculate connected components using DFS, and we assign characters to components using any order. If count of the character is greater than length of the connected component, then we assign that character to that component. So the complexity of this solution is order of n square, and we can optimize this solution using GCD. So length of connected component will be L by GCD of L comma K, and there will be the GCD of L comma K number of connected components. So we can directly calculate GCD and we can get the number of connected components and length. Then we can solve this problem using order of n log n. And here is the solution in C++. Here we are calculating counts for unique characters. Then we are checking from n to 1, calculating GCD and assigning characters in this loop. So this is the solution. Anyone have any doubts? Yes.
Hello. I'm audible. Actually, I wanted to ask, in given a problem, how do we determine if greedy approach would work in that problem? Like, is there any general approach that we can apply? Like, how do we determine whether greedy approach is applicable for that problem, or we need to apply DP?
For this problem, length of all connected components are equal. Then that's why greedy approach is working here. But if it is different, then we cannot apply greedy approach here. It will become like 0-1 knapsack problem.
Okay. Okay.
Actually, I want to discuss one thing here. In the last year ICPC regionals, we had a question on greedy, and actually we solved it using. We were trying to solve it by using dynamic programming. Like, we didn't feel like it was DP. Sorry, greedy. So it's not that trivial to find. Like, in few questions, you can directly see that it's a greedy question, but in most of the cases, you have to think about more test cases and check if greedy works or not. If you find at least one case in which greedy won't work, then it should definitely be DP.
Okay.
Can you show the code once again?
Yes.
Yeah, Jainil, can you go through the code once again?
Yes. Yes.
One more thing I want to add here is, like, even if you don't get the idea of GCD, you can go through all devices of K for inside the for loop. So it
Yeah,
could also be used in this condition.
will also work. We have checked that.
Yeah, so as n square is allowed, like, you can also go through all devices of K inside the loop. Does anyone have any doubts? So if it's clear, we can go to the next problem. Can we move on? Okay, so let us go to the next problem. My screen is visible, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, like, how many of you read this problem? Let us go through the problem first. You are given an M size array, which is buildings, and each of the array element is in the range 0 to n. And you are also given an M cross n matrix in which cost of ij represents replacing building of I with a positive number j. Like, if building of I is 0, it means that in that land there is no building constructed, and you will definitely have to construct a building of at least one floor, and you can at most have n floors in that building. So this was about the first part. And next thing is, like, the community is maximal subarray of buildings in which all the numbers are same. So consider an input array like this, which has 1 1 1 2 2 1 3 3 3. So it has 4 communities, like all ones form one community, and then all twos, and then one, and all threes. So these are called communities, and you need to find the total cost of replacing all the zeros in the array with a positive number in the range 1 to n, such that there are exactly k communities in the end, at the end of replacement. And if it is not possible to form k communities by doing anything, then you just have to return -1. Is the question clear, or should I go through it again? Okay. Yeah, so if we check out the quick explanation, like the constraints we set were actually allowing n square mk. And yeah, this problem will involve dynamic programming, and else it would go exponential to solve. So let us check the state first. What is the state in this problem? So dp of ijk represents the minimum cost of replacing all zeros in the subarray of buildings containing 1, 2, and till I indices. So the subarray starting from first index to ith index, such that buildings of I is has exactly j floors. So j is in the range 1 to n, and it will also ensure that it will have exactly k communities. So this is the state of the DP. Is this clear? We'll go through it once again. Like dp of ijk represents the minimum cost of replacing all zeros in the subarray of buildings starting from first index till ith index, such that the ith building has exactly j floors and the subarray has exactly k components. So this is the transition of dp. It won't be clear here. We'll go through the explanation. Now, once we have the state in dp, we just need to figure out the transition. Now, let us go case by case and check if how transition works in this. So if already the building of I has j floors, then we don't need to add any extra cost. Like we are not allowed to build a building where already there is a building of some number of floors. So there are two cases from which we can get k communities. We can get k communities in two ways. Like one way is last index alone is alone a part of one community. So this is the only one element in the kth community, and all the previous elements till I-1 form k-1 communities. This is one case, and the other case is more than one buildings are there in kth community. So how will we check these two cases? The first case is only this element is in the kth community. In that case, we need to consider the minimum of dp of I-1, p, k-1. So there should be k-1 communities till I-1th index, and we'll go through all the number of floors for that, and we'll just find the minimum cost to do that. And then the other way is the kth community has more than one buildings. So in this case, we need to consider dp of I-1, j, k, because even till I-1th index there should be k communities present. So this will just the last element will just be added to the last community. So in the first case, we will just consider the minimum of these two ways, which is dp of I-1 jk, which we'll get by having having more than one elements in the kth community, and the other case is only one element in the kth community. So this is the first case. Now let us go to another case where buildings of I is 0. So in this case, we'll have to build the building of some floors, which the number of floors can be 1 to n. So it's clear that for building of I to have j floors, you need to build a building with the cost of ij. You are given the cost matrix in the start rate. So that cost would add up here. And once you build a building of j floors at ith index, we are just going back to this previous case, like buildings of I is j now. And the same transition works here. So we just need to add cost of ij in this case to the this transition. One thing you need to keep in mind is this transition works only if k is less than or equal to I. It's not possible to have more than I communities, right, with I buildings. So these are the two cases, and in all other cases, it's impossible to make a transition. Like the cost would be, you can put the cost to set the cost to infinity. So if we check the overall transition, like dp of ijk is a minimum of dp of I-1 jk, where kth community has more than one element, more than one buildings in it, and the other case is kth community has exactly one building. And the second case is where buildings of I is 0. There we'll add the cost of ij and the transition would be same. And in all other cases, it would be infinity. Now, we have checked the state and state transition. The thing remaining is initialization. So one way to initialize is like we can add a dummy index at the start. Like we could extend each dimension by 1, and we can initialize the entire array with zeros. And we'll have to set dp of 0 jk and dp of ij 0 to infinity. Like this is the base case, which will help for a transition starting from 1 to n. We can also do the initialization in other way, like we can complete the dp table for I equal to 1, and we can start from I equal to 2 and go to till n. Sorry. So there are many ways of initializing. This is one way. Yeah, the time complexity which we set the constraints for was allowing this method takes order n square mk, and we also didn't optimize the space, so it would take n mk. But we could reduce the time to n mk and the space to nk. Like if you see here, we are not we are just taking the previous index for every building. So we just need to take just need to store the previous index values. So it would reduce the dimension by m. So space would be reduced, and for reducing the time, like you can just maintain the minimum of both of these in the array. Yeah, so it's like optimizing further, but this would work. Like this solution would work in the given constraints. If we go through the code, like at the start, it's just initializing. We are setting dp of 0 jk to infinity and ij 0 to infinity. All other, and we initialize the dp array with all zeros. And here it's just those two transitions which we write. dp of ijk is min of dp of I-1 jk, and the other case where there is exactly one building in the kth community. And this is where building of I-1 is 0. Sorry, building of I is 0. So we'll just add the cost of that. And in all other cases, it's infinity. Once we do that, if answer is less than infinity, then we'll return the answer, else it's -1. Yeah, that's it. Was it clear, or should I go through it once again?
Karthikeya, can you explain how did you improve the time to NMK?
It's like we are maintaining the, what do you call, we are having the entire array for n, right? Like the previous stage. Wait, I'll tell this. So we are going through all p's such that for p1 to n, and we don't need to store all these, right?
You don't need to store for this M actually. Like so the space improves, but for time, don't you have to check again?
Can't we just
Like
maintain the
minimum
minimum? Can't we just?
no, it's a problem because yeah, you have to even make sure that p is not equal to j. So it's like you have to maintain a minimum.
No, we'll maintain the minimum in two cases, right?
But aren't we iterating over all? Oh. If we are iterating over all j, right? So for every j, we'll require a minimum such that p is not equal to j. So I'm not sure like how is it possible?
Like I think we can take two min, the first min and the second min.
That's right.
Okay.
So one is,
and then check and then maintain the indices as well. So if the indices is same, then take the second min. Otherwise, take the first one.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So but whatever the basic dp would also work, like n square mk and with space n mk. If you have any doubts, you can put in the chat. Okay. So was the explanation clear for the last one? Or should I go through once again? Okay. I think it's clear. Like, if you have any doubt in any of the questions, you can ask.
So I have a doubt in the last question.
Okay.
The optimization that you mentioned, the last thing, yeah. So what exactly are you doing? You talked about minimum, taking minimum. So can you explain it again?
So what we are doing here is we are, for every transition, we are going through all P's, like we are going through all possible floors and taking the minimum, right? In this solution.
Yeah, yes.
So we can optimize that part. Like, we don't need to iterate for every transition. We can just keep maintaining those minimums of where I is what do you call it? J equal to P and J not equal to P. There will be two cases, right?
So, but whatever you choose currently, that also affects the next one. So whatever building you make for the current node, that affects the outcome of the next index. So how can you be sure that taking? So what is the best thing to take currently? I'm not able to get it.
Okay. At least we can have this, right? We'll take the minimum of all elements, and we'll also store the second minimum of all of these. Okay. We'll take minimum of entire thing, and we'll also take the second minimum of all the floors. So by having these both, we can check with that index right now.
Karthik, one more thing now, like even if you maintain the second minimum, but is in the second line of your DP, shouldn't that cost IJ? Okay, it's fine, I guess. Yeah, nothing. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So can I? So let's suppose there are two houses adjacent to each other, and so both have initial building size equal to 0. So both of these initially we have 0 floors. So what you're saying is take both of their minimum, sort of like minimum of both of them individually, and so there could be a case. What I'm trying to say is there could be a case where for the first house you don't take the minimum, but for the second house you take the minimum. So the net comes out to the net of the two comes out to be less, and it is also based on the collections that we want to make at the end. So taking minimum, I don't know.
Like, first of all, I want to make it clear, like we are storing minimum for number of floors, like which number of floors is giving us minimum.
Yeah.
So if the I don't know, like I didn't get your question. Kishan, did you get his question?
Okay, maybe I'll see it.
I didn't get it, but like I think you're considering that two houses, right? But actually, it's like we're just considering the previous house and the number of floors that are constructed in it. So the speed that is there, it's iterating over the number of floors. And now you want to make sure that P is not equal to J. The previous building is not equal to the number of floors that we intend to build here. So so you could actually choose anything. So you could always iterate over all, but what we could do is like you could compute the minimum in this previous, like the previous building is built with P floors. So what you can do is you compute the minimum over all of these for P going from 1 to N and store it and keep. So now you could use that, but there is this problem that the minimum is actually equal to J, and we don't want. So what he was suggesting that we can actually store the least two elements, like least two values.
Yeah. So minimum and the second minimum.
Yeah, minimum and second minimum.
Yeah. So expanding on this. So if you maybe there is a third minimum. that is equal to the third minimum is actually equal to the next building, the building at the right of this current building. So there are three buildings. The first one is fixed, that is P. The second one, for the second one you choose the third minimum, and so maybe that gives a better answer, because of the collection is also one of the parameter. Maybe that.
Actually, it shouldn't give, because the thing is that what is the cost of building a house on T floors over here? It's cost of that IJ, and we are actually iterating like the DP is on IJ, right? So we are basically having this building to have J floors. So we want to build construct a building with J floors, and we want the previous building to be anything other than J. So when will the cost be minimized? This cost of IJ is fixed. So it will be minimized where if we consider the minimum cost to construct, like whatever the minimum cost was till this I-1 buildings, right?
Oh, okay.
So you just
So-
need to consider the minimum till I-1 once you
Yeah.
have built the building at ith index.
So there should be no third minimum which will give a lesser cost, because if the second minimum is actually not equal to J, and even the third minimum is not equal to J, so definitely the second minimum is preferred, right? Because that is of lesser value. It's giving us lesser cost over here. So just maintaining the minimum and second minimum should be sufficient, just to make sure that P is not equal to J.
Okay.
Like this was not the question, like we didn't want to make it tougher, so we have kept the constraints weaker. Like the basic idea of this DP is like you're not trying to optimize anything, you're just thinking about the transition and space. You are using maximum space which you can. Yeah, so if you have any other questions, anyone else, you can ask in the chat or you can unmute and talk. If everything is clear, like we got one feedback that the stories were long, we'll correct that for next time. And can we get some more feedback, like were the questions interesting or were they boring or some kind of stuff? Could you please share the editorials? Yeah, we will put the editorials in CodeChef Discuss, and these problems also will be there for practice. You can practice on this. We'll share the links too. Okay, regarding the questions, like if you don't have any doubts, you can leave. But if you want to give any feedback regarding the contest, yeah, you can leave.